Is my pension enough to retire in the Philippines? It's something that's constantly asked, and I would have to say it all depends on your lifestyle. But there's a broad spectrum of people here, even here on YouTube. So you have a good selection of people, but I'd just be honest and say be very wary of a lot of the information actually being truthful. There's a few guys on YouTube that basically pay for girlfriends, for example, and they call it girlfriends, I call it something else, but you've got to take that sort of stuff into account, because it then means that there is a financial arrangement in there, and I know a lot of you guys actually look for somebody to settle down with. Well, the information relating to those types of women is very different to somebody you'd actually want to settle down with. But also, if somebody has to pay for a relationship, then are they ideal for giving information on relationships? That's the other side of this. So I know it sounds quite a broad spectrum, but I'm just saying when you look at YouTube, that's the sort of things you've got to consider. Is although somebody says, well, it costs this amount, you have to look at how they live and what they're doing. I mean, for example, if you look at Barry and Jay, they live in our apartments, you can see what they're doing, their lifestyle, everything's there. You know, it's right in front of you. You can get an idea of how much the cost of living is for them and whether that's a lifestyle that suits you, financial cost to that, etc. By asking them. There you go. You can ask them directly. But some of the others will actually say, well, I live on this. And then you find out, you know, for example, there was a British guy that said he lives on £400 a month, but in reality he can afford a car and these other things. You cannot do that on £400 a month in the Philippines. Budget wouldn't allow it, let's be honest. Now, what would I say my cost of living is in the Philippines? My cost of living is somewhere around $2,000 a month, US dollars. The reason being is I've got a family and we have things like private education, we have things like we eat out a lot, we have staff in the house, and we have a good standard of living. Now, I will get people going, well, you don't need an amount, you don't need it. That's my standard of living. Your standard of living may be very different, and this is what I'm saying. If you look at the way Jay and Barry live, you can get an idea at their level, because obviously they don't have laundry women, nannies for the kids, that sort of stuff, so their cost of living is cheaper and different. At the same time, you will find some other guys out there will have a larger house, but may reduce on their food costs. They may try and keep their food costs down so they can have a bigger house and things like that. But personally, I think if you wanted to live quite tight life, you could probably just about do it on $500 a month, but you won't have medical insurance. You're likely to have problems if you run into any emergency, for example. Maybe you didn't get to the immigration office and then get some express fees and other things added to your bill. And this is often how people spin out of control financially, because one thing disrupts another. And that $500 a month was very doable until something went wrong. A motorcycle accident, for example. You may already own a motorbike, but your medical bills aren't covered because you ain't got medical insurance. You have to pay for your medical bill, but it's not a case of they'll let you pay it on a weekly or whatever. You've got to get a loan for it, or you've got to pay it in full before you can leave the hospital. The whole point being is there is many things that a lot of people overlook, and these are realities. I've known this sort of stuff to happen to people. I've known people that have to borrow 20,000 pesos to pay the hospital after a motorcycle crash, because quite simply they're waiting on their money coming in. Now myself, I budget. I keep money in the bank. I've got emergency funds. I always plan ahead for this. All the money that goes from YouTube videos goes to the Philippines. It stays in the bank there. It's not a case of I'm spending it or using it. It actually just stays there and builds up over time. In the same way, it's one of the reasons I say it's worth doing these types of channels, because if you just used it to bank the money, it gives you an emergency fund. Now, financially, I would recommend the minimum is $1,000 a month, just to have a comfortable lifestyle. And I know some people will say the US can be cheaper than that. I do agree. If you go out to the Midwest or something, you're going to be able to live a lot cheaper. But a lot of people simply come to the Philippines for women. Whether it's long-term relationships, short-term relationships, bar fining, whatever. The reality is that's the main driver of people coming to the Philippines. Nothing wrong with it. A lot of it is because of the way Western society has gone. I do think that you're more likely to have a traditional marriage by marrying somebody from the Philippines than trying to convert somebody back to what was a traditional marriage in the West. And I wouldn't encourage anybody trying to do that in the West, because quite simply, if they ain't traditional, they ain't gonna be traditional. But that's all I can say on that, really. I would say the minimum you should be looking at is about $1,000. You can do it on less, but look at how people live on less. And it's not being arrogant or whatever. I'm talking about you have limited funds to go traveling regularly. You've got limited funds for eating out. You've got limited funds for transportation and things like that. It's just things to consider. Thanks for watching.